My name is Ophelia. I am 28 years old, and this is the story of how the man who raised me became the man who broke me. The first time my father called me worthless, I was 12. He didn't shout. He didn't hit me. He just laughed. A soft, disappointed laugh. The kind that sinks into your bones and stays there for years. "You're not like your sister," he said. "She's smart. You? You're just slow." I didn't know then that words could carve permanent scars. I just stood there, holding my report card, feeling something inside me quietly die. But tonight was worse, because tonight he said it in front of everyone. It was supposed to be a celebration. My father's 61st birthday. A big dinner at his house in Ohio. Relatives flew in. Friends filled the living room. Laughter echoed off the walls like everything was perfect. I almost didn't go. Something in my chest felt heavy all day, like my body knew what my heart was trying to ignore. But my mother begged me. "Just come," she said. "It'll mean so much to your father." So I came. I wore a simple black dress, nothing flashy, nothing that screamed success, because I learned a long time ago, when you grow up invisible, you stop trying to be seen. Dinner started fine. Small talk, clinking glasses. My sister, Emily, sat across from me. Perfect posture, perfect smile, perfect life. Dad bragged about her like always. "Emily just got another promotion," he announced proudly. "Top of her class, master's degree, corporate job in Chicago." Everyone clapped. Then his eyes drifted to me, and that familiar silence fell. "And this one?" he said, waving his hand in my direction. "Well, someone has to be the disappointment, right?" Laughter rippled around the table. I felt my face burn. I forced a smile. I always did. "What do you do these days?" one of his friends asked politely. Before I could answer, my father cut in. "She doesn't really do anything," he said. "Dropped out of college, couldn't keep up. Not everyone's meant to be educated." Then he leaned back in his chair, sipping his wine like he'd just delivered a punchline. "Some people are just average, or worse." That was the moment. The moment I realized this wasn't ignorance. It wasn't tough love. It was cruelty. And the worst part? He enjoyed it. I wanted to disappear. I remembered being 16, crying over algebra homework while my father stood in the doorway. "You're too stupid for college," he said. "Better start thinking about marrying rich." I remembered being 20, dropping out, not because I was dumb, but because I was working 2 jobs to help pay bills he never thanked me for. I remembered graduating later, quietly, online, at night, alone. He never knew. He never asked. Because in his mind, my story ended the day he decided I was nothing. The dinner continued. Cake was brought out. Candles lit. Someone handed my father a microphone. He stood up, smiling, drunk on attention. "I just want to thank my family," he said. "My wife, my successful daughter." Then he looked straight at me. "And, well, my other daughter. A reminder that not all kids turn out the way you hope." The room went quiet. Someone chuckled awkwardly. I felt my hands shaking under the table. This wasn't a joke anymore. This was public humiliation. And my father was enjoying every second of it. I stood up. Not dramatically, not angrily, just quietly. The chair scraped against the floor. Everyone turned to look at me. My father smirked. "Oh, relax," he said. "Can't you take a joke?" I looked at him, really looked at him. The man who never came to my graduation. The man who told me dreams were for smarter people. The man who convinced me I was small. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel small. I felt calm. Dangerously calm. "I can," I said softly. "But jokes are usually funny." The room froze. My mother's eyes widened. My sister stared at me like she'd never seen me before. My father scoffed. "Don't be sensitive," he said. "It's just the truth. That word. Truth." I almost laughed, because he had no idea how wrong he was. I leaned forward slightly. "You're right," I said. "I'm not like Emily." My father nodded smugly. "I didn't follow the path you chose," I continued. "I didn't live the life you brag about." People leaned in. Something had shifted. "And you're right," I said again. "You never thought I'd amount to anything." My father smiled. That smile was his biggest mistake, because I wasn't done. Not even close. I looked around the table, at the people who laughed, the people who stayed silent, the people who believed him. Then I looked back at my father. "And that's exactly why," I said slowly. "You have no idea who I really am." Silence. Pure. Sharp. Uncomfortable. My father frowned. "What does that mean?" he asked. I picked up my purse. "I think," I said, "you're about to find out." I walked out of that house with my heart pounding. Not from fear, from certainty. Because the truth I'd buried for years was about to come out. And when it did, the man who called me uneducated and worthless would finally understand just how powerful silence can be. Right before it breaks. I didn't cry when I left my father's house. That surprised me. I drove for nearly an hour, hands tight on the steering wheel, eyes fixed on the road like if I looked away, everything I'd buried might spill out. The house disappeared behind me. The laughter, the clinking glasses, my father's smug smile. Gone. But his voice followed me. Uneducated. Worthless. Disappointment. Funny thing about hearing the same words your whole life. Eventually, they stop hurting. And instead, they start motivating. People assume silence means weakness. They think if you don't defend yourself, you have nothing to say. What they never consider is that silence can be strategy. And I had been silent for a long time. I grew up in a house where love was conditional. If you achieved something my father could brag about, you mattered. If you didn't, you learned to disappear. Emily learned early how to win his approval. Perfect grades, perfect manners, perfect obedience. I learned something else. How to survive unnoticed. When I dropped out of college at 20, my father didn't ask why. He didn't ask about the nights I stayed up working 2 jobs, or the panic attacks, or the tuition bill I quietly paid myself after he promised to help and never did. He just nodded. "See?" he told everyone. "I knew she wouldn't make it." That was the day I stopped explaining myself. What he never knew was that I didn't quit learning. I just stopped learning where he could see me. Online courses, certifications, late-night study sessions after 12-hour shifts. I graduated quietly. No cap, no gown, no applause. Just a confirmation email and a screen that said, "Congratulations." I stared at it for a long time. Then I closed my laptop and went to work the next morning like nothing had changed. Because I wasn't doing it for them. I was doing it for me. The first company I started failed. Badly. I lost money. I slept on a friend's couch. I ate ramen for weeks. I never told my family. Why would I? To them, failure was proof I deserved nothing. Success was something I wasn't allowed to have. So I failed in private. And learned. The second time was different. I built something small. Digital. Quiet. No office. No flashy announcements. Just results. Clients came. Then more clients. Then contracts I never imagined my name would be on. Money followed. Real money. The kind that changes how you sleep at night. But I kept my life simple. Old car. Modest apartment. No designer bags. Not because I couldn't afford more, but because I didn't want questions, especially not from my father. Because if he knew, he would take credit. That's another thing no one tells you. Some parents don't just want successful children. They want ownership of that success. And I wasn't giving him that. A week after the dinner, my mother called. Her voice was tired. "You embarrassed your father," she said softly. I almost laughed. "Did I?" I asked. "He was joking," she insisted. "You know how he is." I did know. That was the problem. "He's been under a lot of stress," she continued. "And your sister's wedding is coming up. We could really use some help." There it was. Not an apology. Not accountability. A request. I stared at the wall, letting the silence stretch. "What kind of help?" I asked. She hesitated. "Financial," she said quietly. Of course. Apparently my father had invested heavily in a business venture with one of his friends. A sure thing. It collapsed. Loans, debt, late notices. The man who mocked me for being uneducated had signed contracts he didn't even read. And now, he was drowning. I told my mother I'd think about it. Then I hung up. And for the first time since that dinner, I smiled. Not because he was struggling, but because the universe had a dark sense of timing. 2 days later, my sister called. She didn't waste time. "Dad says you owe him," she said. I blinked. "Owe him what?" "For everything," she snapped. "For raising you. For supporting you when you failed." I stayed quiet. "You should help," she continued. "Even if you don't have much, it's the least you can do." If she only knew. That night, I opened my laptop. I pulled up documents I hadn't looked at in years. Bank statements, contracts, company records, proof. Proof of everything I'd built while they were busy underestimating me. I wasn't planning revenge. Not yet. I was planning clarity. Because before you break someone's illusion of power, you have to let them feel secure in it. And my father? He still thought I was nothing. Still thought I was small. Dependent. Uneducated. Still thought he controlled the narrative. Which meant he was about to make a very expensive mistake. The invitation arrived a week later. Emily's engagement dinner, another family gathering, another stage, and my name printed neatly at the bottom of the card. I set it down slowly. This time, I wouldn't walk out. Because some truths are too powerful to be delivered quietly. Power doesn't disappear all at once. It leaks. Slowly, quietly. And the people who lose it are usually the last to notice. My father still thought he was in control. That was my advantage. I went to the engagement dinner, not dressed to impress, not dressed to disappear, just present. My father barely looked at me when I arrived. Good. Men like him don't see threats unless they come dressed like one. The restaurant was expensive. Crystal glasses, white tablecloths. The kind of place my father loved because it made him feel important. He stood tapping his glass for attention. "To family," he said proudly. "To success. To legacy." Legacy. I almost smiled. Dinner flowed like a performance. Emily glowed. My mother played peacemaker. My father held court. Then, like clockwork, the conversation turned. "I've been dealing with some temporary setbacks," my father said, shaking his head dramatically. Everyone leaned in. "Business risks," he continued. "You know how it is." I did know, because I'd read every contract he signed. A cousin asked, "Everything okay financially?" My father laughed too loudly. "Of course," he said. "I've always handled my responsibilities." I felt his eyes flick toward me. Testing, waiting. Later, when the plates were cleared and the room softened with wine, he leaned toward me. "Your mother says you might help out," he said casually. Not a request, an expectation. "How?" I asked. A flicker of annoyance crossed his face. "A loan," he said. "Nothing major. You can contribute a little." Little. I nodded slowly. "I might be able to help," I said. His shoulders relaxed instantly. There it was. The assumption. He didn't ask where the money would come from. He didn't ask what I did for work. Because in his mind, I was still the same girl. Still small. Still desperate for approval. Still easy to control. The next morning, I emailed him. Professional. Polite. I asked for details, amounts, deadlines, paperwork. He seemed surprised by my tone. But desperation makes people careless. He sent everything. Bank statements, debt summaries, loan agreements, even the ones he'd hidden from my mother. I printed them all, spread them across my dining table, and for the first time I saw the full picture. My father wasn't just struggling, he was bleeding. Bad investments, unpaid taxes, personal guarantees tied to his house. One wrong move, and everything he'd built would collapse. I could have walked away. I could have let the bank take it all. But that wouldn't teach him anything. No, this wasn't about destruction. This was about truth. I contacted my lawyer, then my accountant, then my business partner, the only person who knew the full extent of my work. We didn't rush, we calculated. I structured the help carefully. A legal loan, clear terms, full transparency, no emotion, just ink. When I presented the documents to my father, he skimmed them. Didn't read the fine print. He never did. Smart girl, he said, smirking. Maybe you learned something after all? I let that sit. He signed, and in that moment, something shifted. Not for him. For me. Because with one signature, the power dynamic changed. Weeks passed, payments were made, on time. My father grew comfortable, confident, careless. Then he missed one, just one. I didn't call. Didn't remind him. I waited. At the next family gathering, he made another joke. Careful, he said loudly, pointing at me. She might charge us interest next. Laughter. I smiled. Because what he didn't know was that the interest had already started. That night, I sent one email. Short, professional, a reminder of the agreement, the penalties, the clauses he never read. He called immediately. What is this? He demanded. I stayed calm. It's the contract, I said. The one you signed. This wasn't what we discussed, he snapped. It's exactly what you signed, I replied. Silence. Then his voice dropped. You wouldn't do this to your own father. I closed my eyes. And for the first time, I said it. You did this to me first. The line went dead. 3 days later, he showed up at my apartment. Unannounced. Panicked. The man who once towered over me now stood in my doorway, uncertain. You have to fix this, he said. You don't understand what you're doing. I stepped aside, let him in. I understand perfectly, I said quietly. He looked around, really looked. The calm, the order, the life. Something in his face changed. Who are you? He asked. I met his eyes. And this time, I didn't look away. My father sat on my couch like a stranger, hands clasped, eyes darting. The man who once filled rooms with his voice now barely knew what to say. I didn't know, he muttered. You never told us. I tilted my head slightly. You never asked. The words landed heavier than I expected. He looked around my apartment again. The framed certificates, the quiet confidence, the life that didn't need his approval. All this time, he said slowly, you were doing what exactly? I smiled. Not proudly, not smugly, honestly. I built something, I said, while you were busy telling people I was nothing. The truth doesn't need drama. It just needs daylight. 2 weeks later, the family gathered again. This time, it wasn't for a celebration. It was for information. My father had called the meeting. His voice over the phone had been thin. Please come, he said. We need to talk. Everyone was there. My mother sat stiffly. Emily looked confused. Aunts, uncles, cousins, the same people who laughed, the same table, different energy. My father stood, cleared his throat. "I owe someone an apology," he said. I felt every eye turn toward me. For a moment, I wondered if he'd do it, really do it. "I was wrong," he continued, "about my daughter." His voice cracked. The room froze. "She is not uneducated," he said. "She is not worthless." I stayed still. "She built a successful business," he said, "on her own, without help, without recognition." My mother covered her mouth. Emily's face drained of color. "And when I failed," he added, "she was the only one who stepped forward." Silence, heavy, public, unavoidable. "I spent years tearing her down," he said quietly, "and she never defended herself." He looked at me, and I mistook her silence for weakness. I met his gaze. "And now?" I asked softly. He swallowed. "Now I know better." After the meeting, people approached me. Apologies, awkward compliments, regret wrapped in politeness. I accepted none of it, not because I was angry, but because I didn't need it. My sister found me by the window. "I didn't know," she said. "I know," I replied, and that was all. Later that night, my father called. "I'll pay you back," he said. "Every cent." "I know," I replied. "I just wanted to say," his voice shook, "I'm proud of you." I closed my eyes. The words came late, but they came. "I don't need pride," I said calmly. "I needed respect." He didn't argue. Here's the thing no one tells you. Revenge doesn't always look like destruction. Sometimes, it looks like clarity. Like standing tall without raising your voice. Like letting someone live with the full weight of what they almost destroyed. I didn't ruin my father. I didn't humiliate him. I simply stopped shrinking. And that was enough. Because the truth is, the moment he called me uneducated and worthless, I was already becoming unstoppable.